Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night. As we get a look behind the book, today I am joined by the fabulous Lashell, author of several books, including Fate of Water and Wind, which I read and I loved, Wrath of Sun and Shadows, and War of Fire and Fortune. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yes, it's so great. I reached out to you and I was like, I really hope she'll let me interview her because I loved this book and I want to see how her brain works. So I really appreciate it.
I'm excited.
So I read the first book and I got left on a cliff. So I'm very excited to read the second and third book. And you do have a prequel.
Yeah,
that sets up.
There is a prequel novella that sets up the first book. But I mean, you don't necessarily have to read it, but I just recommend reading it because it gives you a lot of backstory on Emmeline and Ace and like how the war started and like all of that good stuff.
It's wonderful. I love the characters. I love Ace. I love that he signs.
Yeah.
So I love that you included that. That is like, I love when authors do that. In their books.
Yeah, I originally, before I started writing and everything, I wanted to go to college to be a sign language interpreter. So I knew that I wanted to include, obviously it's different in the books because he can speak. He just makes a vow not to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a part of like his culture. So I wanted to like twist it into like a cultural thing.
It was great. It was great the way you did that.
Yeah.
So in real life, did you have like a family member or friend that used sign language? Like what prompted you to want to do that?
Whenever I was really, really young, my dad knew sign language. He wasn't deaf, but he knew sign language. And he had a friend that was deaf. And they would sign together all the time. And then that kind of just stuck with me. And then whenever I was in high school, I had wanted to go to college for sign language interpreting. And then eventually it kind of like, it fell off, college is expensive, life happens. And I ended up not doing it. But then whenever I started writing, I wanted to incorporate it to my stories. So
yeah, it's a very unique way, the way you did it. And I really love, like I said, I love when authors include that. I have 2 kids on the spectrum, so I love when books have any type of special needs type person, any of that, like any kind of homage to that, because it makes everything more like connected and inclusive and it doesn't leave anyone out. So I really liked that. I love Ace.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite characters.
He's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. Was he hard to write?
In the novellas and in Fate, he came very easy to me. Wrath was difficult for me to write because there is a love interest that's introduced in Wrath. And for some reason, their relationship was hard for me to write. I could not tell you why. I couldn't pinpoint it whenever I was writing it, but it just took me a long time to write that draft and get it right, or to the point where I felt like it was good enough. But for the most part, Ace comes pretty easy for me.
That's awesome. So when you're writing, does writing energize you or does it make you tired?
I think it would depend on the day. So some days I'll start writing and I'll get into like this groove of writing where like I just won't stop and I can just keep going. And like I'll look up and all of a sudden I've written 2,000 words and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just was like flowing freely. But then other days are hard days and I'll sit down to write and I might write like 3 sentences and it's like grinding teeth trying to get anything out. So I really think it just depends on the day, if it's going to be a good writing day or not. Especially if my kids aren't home or anything like that. Like, I feel like there's plenty of factors that go into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Moms balancing everything is definitely an art, and it can sometimes mess up the creative process.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you ever get writer's block?
Actually, yeah. When I first started writing the Osparia series, I started writing it, and then I started writing it in either late 2021 or early 2022, and I
Mhm.
ended up stopping. I ended up stopping writing it because the writing block was like so bad. It was like, I don't know, some sort of mental hurdle in my head that I just couldn't get over. And instead of continuing with the Osparia series, I ended up writing a different book in a different genre because I was like, I just need to like step back from this for a minute.
Mhm.
So I actually ended up writing The Promised Princess, which is a historical romance. Um, Not necessarily a fantasy setting, but it is a made up world.
Mhm.
Um, but there's no magic in it. And I ended up writing that and publishing that before I went back to the Osparia series because the writing block was like so hard.
Yeah. So you just
But
stepped away, took a whole break, paused it, and then
yeah, and
regrouped and
then
got
and
back.
then I came back to it and like ripped it apart and rewrote it. And since then I would say for the most part it's been pretty smooth. I mean, I'll have my moments where I might go like a few days without writing or maybe a few weeks without touching that story because I have multiple docs with a bunch
Mhm.
of different stories that I have planned. But I would say that that was the biggest writer block moment that I've ever had. And for the most part, since then, I haven't really had many more of those.
Oh, that's great. So are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, I'm a pantser, 100%. Like I, I have scenes in my head, but I have no idea where they're going to end up.
Mhm.
Um, the only thing I know is how the series ends. So, like before I ever started the series, I knew I knew the ending of each book
Mhm.
before I ever started the series. So I knew that main plot point at the end where I wanted to stop it. But for the most part, other than maybe like 2 to 3 scenes in each book, I was pantsing my way through most of it and just letting the characters lead me
Mhm.
wherever they wanted to go. I would just let them go. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So do you have plans for more books within this world?
As of now, I do not. So after I'm done writing War, I don't have any plans to write any
Mhm.
more books in this world. But like as an author, I can't say never
Mhm.
because like you just never know whenever like another character or another plot line might pop up into your head in that world and then you could just be like, well, I could just do a spin-off book or something. So
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'll never do it, but as of now there's no plans. No.
Excited. I went um to look on when I went and added this book to do the when I posted my review, I went to look at your other books and I added a few of them. And you have one coming up this December
Mm-hmm.
that looks like it's going to be released.
Yeah, so I have it's going to be a holiday novella. Um it's going to be a spicy holiday novella.
Mm.
um and I haven't started writing it yet because it's going to be a short story, but
Mhm.
I have that one coming out and then right now I'm currently trying to write a Halloween novella.
Ooh.
And once I get those two uh done, I'm going to jump back into War and
Okay.
then hopefully finish War and publish War like spring of next year. And then
Mhm.
the Osparia series will be done. So,
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I'm not too far off because I'm sure the next one leaves it on a cliffhanger and then I'll be hanging there just till spring. So that'll be good. So that'll be good. But I'll have a couple in the middle to like tide me over
yeah.
until that one comes out.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. That's really exciting. So do you have a writing kryptonite?
Um, I would say, well, my kids, for one. Um, but I would also say like sometimes whenever I have free time, in that free time I should be writing because I don't get much free time because I do have a day job. So I have a day job and then I have 2 kids. Um, so I would say during my free time, sometimes I'm like, yes, writing's fun for me, but technically it's also like a second job because
Mm-hmm.
I have geared it more towards making it my career at some point. So because of that, it's like sometimes I just want to like I was a reader before I was ever an author. So sometimes I'm like, I just want to binge read for a few hours or
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite authors or books or genres that you like to read?
I love fantasy romance. That is definitely my bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
I will be writing more fantasy romance, especially next year. I have a few other stories planned that I'll start writing next year that are going to be fantasy. Um, One of my favorite authors of all time is Raven Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just got to meet her yesterday because she
Ooh.
was in town. So like I went and I got to meet her in Dallas. So that was super cool. But I absolutely love her series, the Plated Prisoner series,
Yes.
so much.
I just got that first book as a gift, and so I'm like excited to read it.
Yeah.
Don't you just love the moments when you get to meet like someone who inspired you or like have that like
Yeah.
fangirl moment?
Yeah. I was definitely fangirling yesterday.
That's wonderful. Well, that's really great you got to meet her.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, if you could tell your younger writing self something, advice, or just some sort of, nugget of wisdom and something you've learned or observed now as you've written books, what would it be?
Probably three things, and that would be don't compare your writing to others because it should stand on its own because you are your
Mm-hmm.
own person. But it's hard to do that whenever, you see like other people and you're cheering them on and they're successful and they're having their successes and stuff. But then like you read their book and it's like, it's so good. And then you read yours and you're like, that's not as good.
Yeah.
But like as writers, we are our own worst critics. So like we're going to be harder on ourselves than other people probably would be. So it would be that. Um, the next one would uh, be patient with yourself
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I'm constantly trying to like hustle all the time. And it's like, take your time, like be patient with yourself. And the third one would probably be I would have to say, before investing in swag and merchandise for your books,
Mm-hmm.
um, invest that money into your books rather than because I was obsessed, still am with character arts and like t-shirts and I wanted like all the merchandise for my books. But it's like I could have taken that money and like
Mm-hmm.
invested it into like better editing or like whenever I was first starting out, those are things that I would have done, which is like not saying that my books aren't edited. I did have an editor for them, but it's like I could have put more into the book itself rather than like getting merchandise and like swag for my books. And
Yeah, that's great advice. That's definitely great advice.
yeah.
I wouldn't, I would be that person. I would be like wanting to get all the things to go with it.
Yeah, and like it's
Yeah.
so fun and exciting doing that, but whenever I like look back now, like would I love to do that now? Yes, but now it's like I feel like I lean more into like put more effort into the book and into the words and into the editors and like more of the background stuff rather than the stuff
Mhm.
that's going to be like on display.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's definitely good advice.
but yeah, if I
It
could,
makes your book richer and more, um, not complete, but like fully well rounded and
yeah,
polished.
yeah. So if I could tell my younger self to do that, that's what I would do.
And that's what you do. Yeah. So, because you have magical creatures and you are a fantasy writer, I always have to ask this. If you could be any mythical magical creature, what would it be and why?
If we're going off of the Osparia series. I would probably want to be a just because of like the abilities that they have, which you'll learn more about in book 2.
Mhm.
Um, and then if not that, then probably a sky elf because I love Ace and I would love to have wings. I'm obsessed with winged males.
Yes, I'm right there with you.
I'm pretty sure even in like the next few, well, one of them doesn't have wings, but in the next fantasy series that I have planned, he has wings. And then there's another fantasy, as far as I know, it's going to be a standalone. So right now
Mhm.
I have a fantasy duology planned, and then I have a fantasy standalone planned. And in both of those, like the male main character has wings.
Yeah. I would totally be right there with you. I'd be the wings. I would want to fly.
Yeah.
I would want to soar through the sky and have all of
Yeah.
that.
So
That
either
would
a
be,
soothsayer or a sky elf because I'd want to fly.
yeah, that's wonderful. Awesome. So, what is the most difficult part of writing for you?
I would say there's this point when you're writing a book and it's usually right around the 25% mark to the 50% mark.
Mhm.
The beginning is usually easy, but once you hit like the 1/4% mark in the book, 25 to 30%, it's like you hit this sludge. It's like
Mhm.
mental sludge or like hurdle.
Mhm.
And it's almost like you're like wading through murky water trying to get out of it. And it happens with me with almost every book I've written where I can tell that I'm in it because like my word count gets lower and I'm a lot slower at writing.
Uh-huh.
And every time I sit down, I'm like slightly like, oh man, like ew. This is gonna be hard because I don't know what it is about that point in a book, but there's like 20% right there as you're writing
Yeah.
that is just like quicksand. And for some reason,
Yeah.
you're like dragging to get through it.
Yeah.
But with
You're like, I
every,
hate it here.
yeah, like with every book, right around that point, like the 25-30% mark until you hit the halfway mark, it's like a drag for me. And I don't know if it's like that for every author or who
Mhm.
knows, like other authors, they might be like, oh yeah, like the 50% to the 75% or, but in that little snippet in every book I've written, it's always like a drag until I can finally get over like the halfway hurdle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have to say that's probably the most difficult. And then the next most difficult thing is marketing. It's not even writing.
Okay.
It's not even writing at that point. Once I get over that little hurdle, writing usually turns into a breeze. And then it's like
Mhm.
worrying about after the book is published, like, oh no, I have to tell people I wrote this.
Are you more of like an introvert?
um, I would say that I am for the most part. I'm pretty introverted, but whenever I am in a social setting, like I can be talkative and
Mhm.
outgoing, but I feel like my social battery like it like drains really quickly. So
Mhm.
like I might go to like one social event and then I'm like, all right, back to my bat cave for like,
Yeah.
a month or two and then,
Yeah.
I'll go for another one, but for the most part I would say like I'm introverted for the most part.
Yeah. I feel like that I'm an introvert and I feel like it's hard to like talk about yourself or promote yourself being an introvert.
Yeah, yeah. Like you have to be confident and be like, this story is amazing and you should read it. When in reality, as the author, you probably have the most self doubt about it. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, here you go. This is so good, kinda. I think. I don't know.
Just say this out loud.
Just say that it's good.
Yeah, I get that a few times. I've heard people say that the marketing side of it is like the least favorite part
Yeah,
of the writing
yeah.
process.
It's really hard to like first off put yourself out there to I mean you're essentially kind of bragging about yourself like this is so good you should read it and then also like there's so many great books out there and so many great series like it's easy to like get imposter syndrome about
Yeah.
it too. So I would definitely say that the marketing is harder than writing after
Yeah.
you get over that little hump in the middle.
Little hump. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, what's the most difficult aspect of writing the opposite sex when you're doing those chapters?
I would say the most difficult about that is two things. For one, obviously, whenever you're writing a spice scene in the opposite sex, you don't know what that feels like for them because you're not them. So definitely like delving into that and asking questions
Yeah.
about that. But also, um, I feel like a lot of like male emotions in today's society, it's like looked almost frowned upon for like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't have feelings, you have to be a man, you know?
Yeah.
And I despise that outlook. So like I try to make the men in my books, emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Um because I want people to know that it's okay. Like we both of us have feelings in that
Yeah.
way, and they're usually strong and bold feelings, and that's perfectly okay regardless of being male or female. So I would say that those are like the difficult aspects of writing the opposite sex whenever I'm writing.
So on the flip side of the hardest part about writing, what is the part that you love the most about writing?
I absolutely love the creative freedom. I literally can do whatever I want. Like in any fantasy thing that I could possibly think up in my imagination or in
Mm-hmm.
my wildest dreams, I can jot it down, make a note of it, and like somehow link it into like this and make it bigger and
Uh-huh.
expand it and just make it grow into something that possibly even other people can relate to at some point. And I think that that's a lot of fun to be able
Yeah.
to do that.
I feel like even though it's fantasy, I can connect usually with one or more of the characters in some way
Yeah.
and have like a camaraderie with them.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for this series?
Oh, the Osparia series 100% was inspired by um Avatar The Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Avatar The Last Airbender whenever I was a kid. And the only thing my little child heart wanted was for Katara and Zuko to end up together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was what I wanted so, so bad. I wanted there to be like an enemies to lovers situation. Um, and you get the whole vibe of ATLA, especially in the novellas. And then it goes into Fate too. But then once we start getting into Wrath and War, it has taken on a whole life of its own now. Like now it's more of its own thing. But you can definitely see where I drew inspo from
Yeah.
ATLA. Um, but I just twisted it to make it my own, like enemies to lovers romance. So heavily inspired by ATLA. Um, I essentially just wanted to take that and spin it with high fantasy, with creatures and like witches, and like throw in all the fantasy elements.
Yeah. No, I totally got that vibe. I loved that show when I was younger. I absolutely adored it. And so when I saw the book blurb about the book and I was reading it, I was like, oh, I have to read this book.
Yeah.
So
It's essentially ATLA meets romantasy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you did it in a whole other different way. Like you kind of combined, yeah, it was done very well. Like I really enjoyed it because I got those vibes, but then I got all of the favorite vibes I love from all of the fantasy romance that I read
Yeah.
because that's like one of my favorite genres.
Yeah.
So it was like a perfect blend of both. So when you were a kid, what inspired you to be a writer, or who inspired you to be a writer?
So I always really loved writing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started with writing fan fiction whenever I was a kid. I
Mm-hmm.
won't tell anyone the name on Wattpad because I'm pretty sure that stuff is still posted. Don't read it, whatever you do, because that is not edited. It's probably terrible. But I started writing fan fictions for literally for like anime shows that I really liked. One of them being Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a fan fiction for Naruto that was also enemies to lovers with like Sasuke and Sakura.
Mm-hmm.
Had a whole bunch of fun writing that. Uh, and even in high school and whenever I was younger, I really loved poetry. I was into
Mm-hmm.
poetry a whole lot. And then that kind of, I went from being really into poetry to kind of leaning into short stories while I was in high school. And then after high school, I ended up like getting married. I had kids. Like I kind of fell out of writing for a little bit. Um, I ended up getting divorced. And then when COVID hit and we were all in lockdown,
Yeah.
um, I was looking for a little bit of an escape, and I started dabbling in writing again. And then it just exploded. So I started writing again during COVID, and I found my joy for it all over again. And I was like, I want to turn this into a career. I would love to do this
That's awesome.
forever.
That's really
So,
great. It's a
yeah.
great goal to have and like a waterfall of a self realization of where you want your
Yeah.
path to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your um, favorite tropes?
Oh, I love enemies to lovers, if that's not obvious.
Yeah.
Enemies to lovers is top tier. It's one of my favorites. My second favorite trope is probably tending.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if the FMC or the MMC gets hurt, and then the other one tends to that one, and then if they're enemies and they like go back and try to help them for whatever reason, they're like, I hate you, but like in reality it's not like they you helped me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but like, so I love enemies to lovers, I love tending. I also love, and this is a little bit more specific, but I love when a guy, when the MMC has been pining for years. So um like maybe the MMC knows that the FMC is their mate or is the person they want to be with, but for whatever reason something is stopping them from being together, and the FMC has no idea. And the
Yeah.
MMC is just over here like drowning in all of this love and affection that they want to take care of them, but they can't because of whatever. Like, I love that trope too. And you
That's
will,
such a good trope. I love that. That's like my favorite. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
be
because
still
then
my
like,
heart.
yeah, so then like he's been pining for her for so long, and then whenever she finally realizes like that they are meant to be together, it's like that super like affectionate, heartfelt, like lovey-dovey moment. It's the best.
It's like a pressure cooker release for the guy. I feel
Yeah, yeah,
like they can just let it all out, and then it's like, ooh,
yeah.
I love that.
It's that final like dump of feelings that they are able to finally release all of it, and then the
Yeah.
FMC, whenever she feels the same way,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the perfect blend. And then if you have all three of those together,
Chef's
chef's
kiss.
kiss.
Chef's kiss. Totally, 100%. So when you're writing your female characters, what are some things that like you're like they have to be having as a female character?
Okay, so I'm really bad about, and this is hilarious. It's funny that you mentioned this because earlier you were like, well, what do you do whenever you try to write the opposite sex? And I'm like, oh yeah, feelings. I want them to have all the feelings.
Yes.
But whenever I write a female, I have a hard time giving her internals. So like I'll write the actions, like I walked here, I did this. And like she'll have thoughts, but
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like I will write my FMCs like they are just badass women, and
Mm-hmm.
like they're unstoppable and they're like nothing hurts them and they like have like a heart of stone almost. And I have to go back through most of the time and like add in those feelings and
Mm-hmm.
like make them more tender and like like, this was something that I struggled with a lot with Emmeline, because after everything that she's been through, I was like, she needs to, break down a little. Like, she needs to, like,
bring the walls down.
Yeah, bring the walls down. Like, okay, you don't have to be this, like, super hard baddie all the time. And that's something that I've had to do with all of my characters. I actually learned a lot with Little Lies, because the female in this is very shy and timid and has a lot of feelings. Even though it's a novella, it's a short story, but she has a lot of feelings because she's been, like, through a lot of trauma. But, like, I feel like with her, I had a lot of fun diving into her feelings and her emotions, and, like, learning from her, like, okay, like, I need to have this even in fantasy. Like, my FMC doesn't have to be, or she shouldn't be, tough as nails all the time. Like, they need to have those vulnerable moments where, like, they do feel, and, like, really dive into those internals while I'm writing. And that's something that I need to do better at, or continue to go through and acknowledge while I'm writing.
Yeah. Do you enjoy writing the banter and the back and forth between characters?
I suck at banter. I love the moments when they happen, whenever I think of something and I'm like, oh yeah, that could be good, and I write it in. But I usually have to go back when I'm editing and tweak my banter like 2 or 3 times, because I'm awkward. It doesn't flow how I want it to flow. It'll be like, you have pretty eyes, like, I like your skin. Like, it'll be so awkward. And I have to, like, go back through and really sit and, like, think about, okay, this is the scene we're in, this is the context, like, let's make this more realistic, because this is not this is not it.
Yeah. Well, you do really good with, like, the tension and the angst, and I feel like the banter was really good. I love the little quips that Ace has, and they're just like, like, they just go at each other, and they're like siblings. Like, they just, I love that.
Yeah, they've been besties their whole lives. Like, and in the novellas, they're teenagers, and that's when the war starts. And in Fate, they're 117 years old in Fate. So, like, they've been together for well over
long time.
And at this point, they essentially are like siblings. They do love each other like siblings. So,
well, I liked that take of it because it was totally platonic. Like, there's a lot of books where it's like, I wasn't sure, because you know how they have, like, the friends to lovers, and I was like, is that what this is going to be? And then no, they were just totally there for each other, loved each other, but not in that way.
They are 100%. They are 100% platonic. That was something that I questioned in the beginning when I wrote them, and you'll see that when you read the novellas, because there is a moment where you're like, is this happening? But they end up talking their way through it, and, like, from that point on, they're just besties. And they realize, like, okay, this is us just going through a hard time right now, and we're not meant to be together.
But, do you draw a lot of your writing from real life, or is it all just kind of, for lack of a better term, like, downloaded into your head, and they come in and they're like, no, this is what we're doing?
I would say that some of, like, the characters that I've written do come from, like, maybe something that they do, like a tick or something that they do might be from someone that I know. Especially, like, I mean, even this book is inspired by an actual story, like, inspired by real life, not from me, but from a friend of mine. Her name is Steph. It's actually dedicated to her, because she was telling me a story about a crazy weekend that she had, and then I asked her, I was like, can I take it and, like, use it for a book? She's like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, I'll
That's
dedicate it to you.
awesome.
So like
Oh, I
that's
want to read it now.
yeah, that's like a spicy novella story. But obviously I twisted it in my
Yeah.
own way. Um, but essentially like a lot of that came from inspo from her. But almost all of my fantasy stuff, everything in it came from my brain and
Mm-hmm.
just me using my imagination. Um, there are like some self inserts, like for example, the Pojo tea
Mm-hmm.
that Emmeline and Ace go to the mountains to get. It's inspired because I love chai tea lattes.
Ooh.
So if you have ever had a chai tea latte, that's essentially what Pojo tastes like.
Yeah.
So, like, I love chai tea lattes. Um, and I was like, well, what's like a fun name that I could give this? And me and my critique partner were talking on the phone one time, and like I was just trying to come up with a fun name. Somehow
Mm-hmm.
we came up with Pojo, and then that just kind of stuck. So then like Pojo tea was like something that I self-inserted just because I love tea.
Yeah. No, I loved that little bit because I love to do afternoon tea. I love like
Yeah.
that whole thing, and I do it at home with my kids. Like when we read. I homeschool, so on Fridays we'll read poetry or we'll read something. We call it the Mad Hatter Tea Party, and we'll sit there and we'll have
Yeah.
tea and read a story or poetry. And
Yeah.
so when you had that in the book, I was
Yeah,
like,
I love chai tea lattes. So if anyone out there ever wants to try what Pojo tastes like, go order yourself a chai tea latte from somewhere, and that's what it tastes like.
that's wonderful. I love that. I love chai tea. They're so good, so good. I love it too. So when you were a kid or young adult, what was some of your favorite books?
Whenever I was in elementary school, I was obsessed with the Junie B. Jones books.
Mm-hmm.
They are little chapter books. I don't know if you ever read them.
My daughter loves them.
I can't remember what the author's name is to credit her. But I loved those books in elementary school. Like read every single one.
Uh-huh.
I also loved the books Hank the Cowdog whenever I was in school. Um, what's another one that I liked? Once I got to middle school, that's when we got into fantasy. I
Mm-hmm.
was really into fantasy in middle school. Obviously, I was a Twihard. I loved me some Twilight. I binged all of
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, I also really, really loved Adrienne Young.
Okay.
I don't know if you know who she is.
I've heard her.
Yes, she is a YA fantasy author. Love all of her stuff. Um, especially Sky in the Deep,
Mm-hmm.
that book. Loved that book. And like it doesn't have any spice or anything like that in it. It's all of her stuff is YA, I believe. I don't think she has any new adult stuff. But Sky in the Deep was one of my favorite books by her. And I've actually read it multiple times. It's a book and I'm not a big rereader. I don't
Mm-hmm.
reread very often. I mean, obviously I read my own books 500 times before I
Yeah.
publish them because I have to.
Yeah.
Um but I have reread that book and I really love that book. But then as I got more into like being an adult, I've loved Raven Kennedy. I really enjoyed Carrie Lake.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy uh, Stacey Marie Brown, the Savage Land series. Love that series. There's so many.
Yeah.
Like now, I can't even name them all. But from whenever I was a kid, those are some of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Those are good. Those are good picks. I've read a few of those, and my daughter right now, it's fun to have her reading them and in them. So if you had to pick, it doesn't have to be your series. If you're like I can't pick anybody from there, but who would be your like book boyfriend, your favorite book boyfriend?
My favorite book boyfriend ever. If we were going from the Osparia series, um, it would be Ace.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ace, even though he's not the main love interest. I love Ace. I want him.
Yes, I'm right there with you.
He would be the one I would pick because he's just perfect. But if I was picking from another series, I would probably pick either Slade from the Plated Prisoner series, or I would pick, oh my gosh, what is his name? I really enjoy Warwick from the Savage Land series.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone else, and right now their name is slipping my brain. But I cannot think of their name right now. There's another series, though, that I'm thinking of, and I can't.
You can't, the name's not there. Well, I love Ace, but I also love a Shadow Daddy, so I'm like,
Bro.
but I love Ace. I love Ace. I definitely, he's got my heart. I love him. He's so great.
He is such a sweet softie. Like, he really is.
Yeah. But he'll kick someone's butt if they mess with, like, anyone he cares about. He's like, no qualms. Don't do that. So I like that. So out of all of your characters, who has been the character that's most like you?
Out of all of the books I've ever written, the one that's most like me is Emmeline. Whenever I was talking about earlier how I'd have to go back through and actually write in feelings, I have this really, it's a really not healthy habit, but I will like disassociate really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to like emotional turmoil situations, and like really healthy. Don't recommend. Don't do that. Actually, like talk about your feelings, and I've gotten way better at that now.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say Emmeline kind of does that. She thinks that she can be everything and save everybody and be strong and like almost whenever, if you were to look at my rough draft whenever I wrote it, you would almost think that she's like hard as stone, like nothing's gonna break me, I'm gonna do this. So I had to go back through there and like really like add more emotional depth to her, because it was like she kept it all locked down. It's like, okay, this just happened to her, what does she feel about that?
Yeah.
You know, like whenever you've read Fate, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. So like when Willow, what happened to Willow? Like, like, and you'll get, whenever you go back and read the novellas, you'll get Willow. You'll get like the backstory.
Oh, I'm glad.
There's backstory there with Willow. So like whenever you read the novellas first, whenever what happens to Willow, it hits a lot harder whenever you've read the novellas, because you have that backstory and like that emotional connection that they had with her. Yeah. But like when Emmeline went through that, or like when she was on the ship and like all of these like terrible things were happening to her, it was almost like she was like, all right, I can do this. Like, this is fine. And it's like, okay, well, if I was actually in this situation, I would have a whole lot of internal feelings about this, and I would just keep them tucked away. But it's like, okay, this is a story that I'm writing. So like, I need you to express these to the reader that you're feeling this way. Yeah. So I'd have to go back and like add all that stuff in. But I would definitely say out of everything I've ever written, Emmeline is the closest to me. Yeah. I would say Emmeline is the tough side of me. And then I would say Abby is the vulnerable side of me. And this, maybe that's crazy to say about a dark romance because this is a dark romance. But Abby is like super vulnerable in this because of like the crap that she's been through. So that's what I would say. I would say Emmeline's the most like me when it comes to like the whole emotional suppression stuff. But then like Abby dips into like that more like vulnerable, I'm going to take my strength back kind of situation.
Yeah, that's great. So we talked about this. You'd say with all the books, was Ace your most favorite character that you wrote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love him. Yeah, so far he has been my favorite. Like to write. Yeah. I love him.
Yeah. So when your cover is really gorgeous, like the ones for this series are really pretty. Did you enjoy that process of creating that with, you used a designer?
Yeah.
Or did you do them yourself?
No.
Did you enjoy that process, or did it like make you really like nervous?
I enjoyed the process for the novellas and for Fate. Like, we barely had to go back and forth. They've really captured my image on what I wanted. Wrath, we went back and forth for months. Wrath, what it looks like right now, was not what it was supposed to be. There was going to be, I wanted there to be, like, if you're looking at the cover, on every cover, something is coming from the left side. So Ace's wing on Fate, and then the lightning on Wrath, and then on War, the crown is falling. And on every cover, I wanted something so that it was like cohesive. And on Wrath, originally, I wanted a shadow man, like a wispy, like shadowed man along the left side. And we went back and forth for at least 3 or 4 months, and it just wasn't coming out the way I saw it in my head. So I ended up switching, and I'm like, okay, well, Vala wields lightning. So I was like, all right, well, we'll just put lightning on there, because that is another theme that comes back throughout the series. And then obviously the crown, like War, that also didn't take very long. Like, they did fabulous on War's cover, but the one that we struggled with the most was Wrath. Like, that cover, we went back and forth for a while. The cover now, gorgeous. I love the cover, but like, it wasn't my original image. I had to like change like what I was going for that one.
Beautiful. They're all beautiful. I love covers. That's like one of my like main things. I love to read the back of the book, but I love the covers. I love when they like depict the story or give you a vibe of the story, and it's just that one other extra layer that makes it great. So for you, what would be like a message that you would want readers to take away after reading your book?
Depending on if we're talking about the Osparia series, a theme that I talk about in the Osparia series a lot is grief. So in the dedication of Wrath, I talk about how, like, don't forget to live for them. So anyone who has gone through grief, because Ace and Emmeline have gone through a lot of grief, I would say like take your time and deal with it how you need to deal with it, but also like don't forget that they would want you to be happy. So that's like a really reoccurring theme in the Osparia series, along with like light and dark too. Like Emmeline's like the light, and Crow is the dark. So like those themes are there too, but I would say that it deals a lot with grief. Yeah.
So what, in your opinion, when you're thinking about a story, what do you think makes a great story?
I would say a story that is, I would say the Osparia series, it's a good blend between character driven and plot driven, because there is an outcome for, you know, like the war and stuff at the end. But I would say I love character driven stories where there's like so much growth between like where the character starts and where they end up in the end. Like they're still them, like the character is still them at their core, but you can just see the growth. The Plated Prisoner series does an excellent job of this, where like the FMC starts here and she has to get to know herself by going through these experiences. And yes, there is an overarching plot, but I would say I love character-driven stories where the character learns and develops and self-reflects and has to like go through hard things for themselves, like not just physically, but emotionally, to get to where they end up at the end of the story. Yeah. I really love stories like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So with publishing, because you've done a few now, from where you started when you first published did you have to tweak a lot, or if you had a lot of learning curves that you've taken into account now?
Oh yeah, so many learning curves. So whenever I first started publishing, uh, like I ended up deciding to change my book sizes because originally they
Mm-hmm.
were like 5.5 by 8, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
originally I was like, okay, yeah, like this is a more trad size, like a traditional publishing size. I was trying to do everything like as close to like how a traditional publisher would do it. Um, and then I started getting into it and I was like, like I really picked this size because it was more of like a traditional publishing size, but like it's not my favorite. And like since I'm indie, I can do what I want. So like
Yeah.
I was like, why am I being such a tryhard? So um my first book is like 5.5 by 8, but all of my other books are like 5.25 by 8 because I like the
Mm-hmm.
smaller size.
Mm-hmm.
I know it doesn't make that big of a difference, but like personally, I just like it.
Yeah.
So I had to change that, and then I've had mistakes where I've accidentally uploaded the manuscript, and I prefer cream pages over white pages. So I've had issues with that on Amazon. Like, there's so many things that, like, so many small things that
Yeah.
now I know to like double, triple check before I go to publish a book, for
So
sure.
like the attention to detail kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
What is your favorite part about being a writer?
I absolutely love the journeys and the stories that I can come up with, um, that hopefully other people can relate to, but also like I'll like learn things through the characters that I write. So
Mhm.
like if I write something and it deals with grief, for example, it's like, okay, well, like you kind of have to break down what these characters go through whenever they're if I were to lose someone like that today, how would I feel? So like it really teaches you, um most of us already have like compassion and empathy, but like
Yeah.
it dives deeper into that whenever you're writing because you want this to connect to other people. So I really enjoy being able to do that with my
Yeah.
stories where I can like dive into the character and then learn from it and grow
Mhm.
from it with them almost. So that's a lot of fun.
So with writing, and you spoke on the readers, do you read reviews or do you just not look at them?
I don't look at reviews.
Yeah.
I will occasionally go on there, but I'll push the filter button so that I only see 5 stars.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'll do that is for like marketing. So like I can say this is what readers are saying, and then I
Hmm.
can like do like a slide post of like 5 stars or 4 stars. But for the most part, I try to stay off of them because reading is subjective, and that is not my space. I
Yeah.
I am a reader, but like I'll read everyone else's books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is like a unique or quirky fact that we don't maybe know about you?
Unique or quirky. Um, well, I used to be fluent in sign language. I feel like a lot of people don't know that about me. But I would say, who am I? I would say I always have to have a like emotional support water cup. I literally
Hmm.
take this everywhere I go.
Yeah.
You won't catch me somewhere without a water cup. I always have one. Maybe that's strange, but like, and I have them in different colors,
Yeah.
and like, I'll match them to like my outfits
Oh, I love that.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll always have a water cup with me. That's my favorite color is teal.
Mine
Um,
too.
yeah, like the dark teal is one of my favorite colors, but I would say like that is something that's quirky about me, but also what people don't know is here's another fun fact that some of my readers have picked up on because if they follow me they would see it. I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with sloths. So
They're so cute.
like I have sloths on over here. I have a big sloth over there in the corner. I have a little sloth that dangles off of my purse. So like they're like my little comfort animal. Like I have little sloth like plushies.
Yeah. So that's like if you had to pick a spirit animal, would it be a sloth?
Probably sloth.
Yeah. I love that. I love sloths. They're so cute.
They are
They're so
so
cute.
adorable. And if you were to ask me where the obsession started, I couldn't tell you when. I don't know. It just slowly started. Oh my gosh. And then I also have sloth slippers.
Those are so cute. I love those. Those are so cute.
I love sloths.
You should put in your next, I don't know, you have plans for books, but like a sidekick sloth.
Yeah,
in one of your books.
That maybe just like dangles off of my FMC, like just cleans
Yeah.
them like a backpack.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That would be so awesome. That would be so awesome. You should totally do that.
I love sloths. Yeah.
That's great.
Those are probably the quirky fun facts. I always have like a different color like just a water cup. I have so many tumblers, it's ridiculous. And I love sloths for absolutely no reason other than they're cute.
I love that. So my last question is, what do you think makes a better writer? Like if you were to, say, try this or do this, what would be your tip to make yourself a better writer?
My tip would be have a critique partner, or make sure that you have beta readers. Have as many eyeballs look over your rough draft or your manuscript as you can. Mm-hmm. And also, like, do not shy away from constructive criticism. Like, if someone says something and you might not agree with it, it's like, okay, well, I don't agree with that. But if you have 3 or 4 people that are all saying the same thing, mm-hmm. you should probably change it or tweak it, or something isn't right with it that you need to like back up and like analyze it again. So I would say don't be scared of constructive criticism, but also in this industry I have learned that when it comes to publishing, there really aren't any rules with how you want to write your story. So, like, whatever comes to you, just let it flow off of the page. But once it's finished, be sure that you have people there to be able to read it and give you tips on it afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great advice. Well, I appreciate you so much joining me today. I loved getting to know you better and learn facts about the writing process that you did and your characters. And like I said, I'm so excited to go finish this series. I read it really fast. Like, I think I read it, like, I stayed up late to read it, like, into the wee hours of the morning. Because for me, that's, like, when I get to do things, is when everybody's asleep.
Same.
So I stay up really late and I read. So I really loved it. I finished it really quick. So I'm very excited to read the other ones. You can find it on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah. And
on Amazon. So please follow her on Instagram, because then you'll get the latest updates on her next projects. And if you have a book bestie, please share this video with them and like and subscribe. And I will be back next week with another look behind the book. Again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a bunch of fun.
Of course. All right, bye-bye for now.
Bye.